What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to Redline Revs. I'm very excited today because I have here the Badger5 oversized turbo intake pipe for my car, and I've been meaning to do something like this for a long time, so it's really quite overdue. Now just want to talk a little bit about what this is, and we'll go on to fitting it in the car itself. We'll take out the old turbo intake pipe and we'll compare them side by side, and then we'll install this. I'll drive around a little bit and report back to you guys on how it feels and whether I feel it's been worth it. But firstly, Badger5. Who are they? What is this? So Badger5 are legendary tuners on the VW, Audi, Seat, Skoda scene, and they developed this originally themselves. It's been through a few versions. It's an oversized turbo intake pipe. So you've got the air filter on this side, and you've got your turbo right there. And it's way bigger. I mean, I don't know if you can see in the video, but in life it's huge. It's way bigger than the original factory system, much less restrictive, much smoother airflow right to the turbo. So it essentially allows your turbo to basically pull in a larger volume of air on the intake, and you know, more air means more power, quicker turbo spool, and all of that. So I'm going to be installing this on my car. It's the Seat Leon Cupra R 1.8T. That's a BAM engine, which was also in the S3s and the TTs. If you've got a different VW group engine, you can still find oversized turbo intake pipes from that kind of generation. But if it's the BAM, if it's the 1.8T BAM, then this is the Badger5 is the one that you want to get. Make sure it's not a cheap knockoff or a copycat. There's loads of those on the market these days. But this was developed by someone who really knows these cars inside out, and it's proven to bear results. So there's people that have claimed having, you know, up to between 15 to 18 brake horsepower increase just by adding this on dyno runs. Now my car's not remapped, I'm on the standard map, so maybe it won't have as big an impact, but anyways, that's enough talking. Let's get it on the car, and then we'll see for ourselves. Okay, I forgot to take it out of the packaging here, so let's just take a closer look at it. I've opted for red because that's the kind of color scheme that I'm going for. Quite thick, feels like it's a, you know, good quality product. It's absolutely huge, so that's 80 millimeters from the air filter right down to the turbo, and that should allow the car to breathe more freely. So let's get it on. Okay, and it also comes with a fitting kit which consists of a number of sturdy looking Jubilee clamps. Okay, so this is my current setup, and obviously yours might look a little bit different. It's a 1.8T BAM here, that's the turbo intake pipe. Mine's a red one here, but it's actually the same size as the original factory pipe. Now some of the clamps that I'm taking off here, my Jubilee clamps, they might be a little bit different than what you've got on the N75, on the diverter valve, and on the brake booster here as well. You might have the one-time use VW clamps that you just need to fight with to get off, but initially just start with working on loosening everything before you disconnect it all. So just loosen everything on the turbo intake side. So I'm now here going for my diverter valve, and like I said, you might have the original VW clamps which you need to break off, but because I've already changed that, I had these Jubilee clamps on here, which is actually easier to take on and off. So here I'm undoing the side that goes to the mass airflow meter and the air intake, and here I've got an oil catch can, but you can disconnect this where your PCV system feeds back into the turbo intake pipe. And for me that was just a question of pulling quite hard, but it came off. There it is. Right, and yeah, so here's another shot of the turbo intake pipe. In terms of getting out the turbo itself. The Jubilee clamp I had on it was in a weird angle, so I just pulled and pulled, and after pulling for a while it slackened up and I was just able to yank it off. So that was quite easy. And here, just disconnecting the other side of the diverter valve, and yeah, you're basically just looking to pull all of these things off it. The line that goes to the top of the diverter valve we'll get in a minute as well, but just once you've got everything loose, start pulling it all kind of off. You can leave everything connected, just take off the turbo inlet side and the diverter valve you want to take off on both sides. Carefully, because you don't want to snap any of the probes. That's the N75 valve off. Here's the air intake or the MAF off. And also the line on the top of the diverter valve needs to come off. And I just needed to pry that with a screwdriver. You'll probably have a one-time use clamp on it if you've not changed that before. And now everything is off, and I was struggling to reach the brake booster line because of just how the Jubilee clamp that was on my turbo intake pipe was positioned. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is, like once you've got everything loose, to just kind of twist and pull the pipe around however you need to reach to the connections, and yeah, just get all of that off. That's the brake servo off. So that's the old turbo intake pipe off. Just remember that the bottom of the diverter valve is what goes into the turbo intake side. Okay. Right, I've got the factory size tip off, and obviously it's not the original one, but it's the same size as what you'd have on the stock car, side by side with the Badger5 here on the right, and you can just see how narrow this original size gets in the middle, whereas the oversized tip is just absolutely huge in comparison. So I'm pretty confident that really is going to free up some airflow for us. I'm just going to pull this out and put it in there. Just going to use a little bit of dishwashing soap as lube. Okay, the way that I got that in there was using some soapy dishwashing liquid for lube, grabbing it with this clamp, having someone else holding this pipe as I push down with the clamp from the top, and that's in. Let's get that on. Okay, I'm going to start with just getting the Jubilee clamp over the turbo side of the pipe, and I want to put the turbo on first. The Badger5 oversized turbo intake pipe was actually surprisingly easy to get back on. You just line up the bottom with the turbo and then just push, and it very neatly and quite snugly just fits over the sleeve on the turbo. So that was a pleasant surprise, because I'll be taking it back off again in a minute after measuring it. Okay, so the way I got it in fact I thought I was going to have to remove this. I might have to later when I'm starting it up, but I just put it in the squeeze and just pressed over the sleeve of the turbo. And let me see if I can show you this. I don't know if you can see what I can see there, but right, just over there, that piece of red, just down there. Over the turbo, there it is. Yeah, so just push that snugly up. Now I've obviously got the Jubilee clamp around the turbo side already, but I'm not going to tighten it up yet, just because I might need to shift and shuffle things about. So let's just get the clamps on all these parts and get ready to do it.
There's a risk of clamps falling down there, no?
Yeah, you've got to be careful. The clamps and stuff. So there's that one is on, and then let's get the N75 back in nice and smoothly. I've got the brake servo here, which goes into there. Oh, but let's not forget our Jubilee clamps. And just as you're placing your Jubilee clamps, just remember to have a look at the space you have around you and make sure you put them in a position where you'll be able to screw and unscrew them easily in the future as well. Right. So the brake servo. So you might have the factory diverter valve. I've got the forge uprated one, but it's a recirculating valve. Do not put a splitter, do not put a blow off valve on these VW Group engines, please. Okay. And the bottom of the diverter valve goes inside the turbo intake, if there's any space for it anymore. Now you might want to approach this in your own way, but for me this was a kind of test fit or trial fit where I connected everything up and I didn't immediately just start tightening it down, but just connect it all up, have a look at if everything's fitting snugly. If you've got the standard factory airbox, then you'll find that the Badger5 tip will fit out of the box. If, like me, you've added an aftermarket air induction system, then you might find that it kinks slightly in the tip, so you'll have to trim a little bit back from the air filter side. So just make sure that everything's sort of aligned and in the right places. I'm just connecting up the diverter valve there on the other side just in case that affects my measurements for when I'm making the cut. It was really quite easy to cut. I just used some scissors and a knife that I had, and once you've got everything aligned and you kind of have an idea of how much you need to cut, just make a mark of it here. But I decided to take the tip completely off the car again to finish the cutting because there was little bits of dust from the cutting that needed to be cleaned before we put it back on. Right, so there it is. I've got the oversized Badger5 tip installed. It really fills up that space there. It's something that's relatively easy to do. Just one thing to bear in mind is that if you haven't got a factory airbox but a induction kit like mine, then you'll probably have to measure up the excess on the tip and cut it from the air filter side, which is what I've had to do, and I've not done it as neatly as I could, but it's perfectly fine. Now everything is in there, everything is tight, there's no kinks anywhere, it all looks good. Yeah, so tightening the bolt on the Jubilee clip on the turbo end was pretty tricky. You just got to make sure when you place it on the turbo that it's in a position that you can actually reach a screwdriver in there through and tighten it up. And I just managed to find some little gaps that I could look through to just see the bolt and just about see what I was doing, and managed to tighten that up. That's all good to go now. So I'm gonna fire it up, let it run for a couple of minutes, take it for a drive, and see what the difference is. So just make sure everything's tight when you've done it all up. Your air intake, the diverter valve pipe, the N75, the brake servo, and your PCV system here, and of course where it bolts onto the turbo at the bottom. And then just put the line back at the top of the diverter valve. Mine's a red one because I changed it. Yours might look different if you've still got the N249 system around here. So yeah, that's how you do it. Let's take it for a spin and then I'll tell you guys what I think. Okay, so I've just got back from a spirited drive with a Badger5 tip turbo intake pipe installed on the car, and I'm really amazed by the results. It feels like there's a lot more urgency. The car's boosting better. Yes, it's definitely got power on the top end, but there was never any doubt about that. I was slightly concerned that I might lose power in the sort of low or mid-range, but actually it feels more urgent there as well. The turbo's just spooling so much better. It sounds better, both in terms of the intake sound as well as the exhaust note. And the car feels almost like it's been remapped just from a bolt-on mod. I'm really impressed. I feel almost like I've got more power from this than I did from the exhaust or from the induction kit. I mean, it might be the case that all those things together have just created really good flow through the system. Yeah, anyways, I'm really impressed by the results. I'm on the standard map yet, and I think this nicely sets me up for my aim, which is to get to stage 2, skip stage 1, and I'm just getting all the hardware and stuff ready for stage 2. Now these guys are absolutely amazing. What they've done with this turbo intake pipe is incredible, and they do engine builds, they do remaps, custom maps and everything. So I'm going to be very strongly considering making the trip over there to Badger5 when I actually do get round to getting my remap. But for now, amazing mod. I wish I'd put it on my car earlier. If you haven't done it yet, I'm going to put the link in the video description to the Badger5 site, so you can just order this and get it on. And remember, don't go for the copycats, don't go for the knockoff Chinese stuff. Nothing has the flow that this has, and this was the original. So yeah, that's version 3 that I had, which is the latest, which is probably the easiest one to get on. Version 2.2 some people still use, which has a kind of billet adapter, but that's what it is. If you found this useful, make sure you comment, rate, subscribe. There's a lot more coming up. I've got to get the intercooler on, I've got to get the car remapped, and there's a lot more to look back on as well. If you're just joining Redland Revs, have a look through the other videos. There's some stuff that you've seen in my engine bay, and I've got videos on you know, how to do the PCV delete, M249 delete and all of that. So make sure you subscribe, and hope to see you next time.